We already know two ways of creating navigation on our websites. One way is to place the A tags directly into the nav tag. The other and recommended way is to place the list with the list items into our nav tag. Both ways we're using display inline block property to set our nav items next to each other, but with the possibility of styling them freely. Today I want to show you another way of placing the blocks elements next to each other, which we can use also to create our navigation. And what I'm talking about is the float property. You can see a simple project on your screen right now. And this is a project that I want to do right now. It's a project of a navigation, which looks exactly like this. This brown rectangle represents the logo of our website or our company. And here we have our nav items. On the full screen, our navigation have the same size and stays at the center of our website. So it's a simple project, which with I can show you the float property, how it works, and what we can do with it. As you can see, I have my index.html file. It's a simple structure, nothing complicated. I placed the link tag with my style CSS file, which you can see in the same catalog as my index.html file. And in our body tag, only thing we have is our navigation. As you can see, I used the UL tag with the li tags inside it, so as in the recommended way of creating a nav. But also in our nav tag, we have a div with the class of logo, which represents the logo of our website. In the actual project of our website, this should be an img tag, but for now we just use a div tag with the plain color, just to keep it more or less how it should be on the actual website. So this is the final effect of our project, and now I will style it from scratch. This is how our project looks in the beginning. So now let's go to our style CSS file to style our project. First thing, let's get rid of this list style of these dots right here, which we can see. Nav UL list style none. Voila, we can see those dots disappeared. Let's make those text indents smaller, just to keep some space in it. Let's do our initial reset. Padding 0, margin 0, and this is what we got. Now let's do something with our elements inside our navigation, because as you can see, in our whole nav tag, we have two elements. One is the div tag with the class of logo, and the other one is the UL tag. So let's refer to them. One is nav div with the logo class. Let's set its height to 60 pixels, for example, and its background color to brown. Like this. We can see it already. Now let's refer to our nav UL. And for now, what we need to set is its background color set to dark cyan, like this. Now, as you can see, as the block elements, our UL tag and our div have 100% of the width of its parent, which is the body tag, which has no paddings and no margins. So it's the 100% of the viewport width, so 100% of our website, so 100% of the browser window. So let's change that for now. Let's set our div width to 20% and our UL width to 80%, just like this. And you can see that now our logo has 20% of the width of its parent. I'm sorry, I said that the parent is the body tag, but as we know, the parent of those elements of the UL tag and the div tag is the nav tag. But since our nav tag is in the body and has no margins and paddings, for now it's still 100% of the browser window. But let's just keep in mind that our elements are set in the nav tag. So now our logo has 20% of the nav tag, and our UL, which is below, has 80% of the nav tag. So 20% plus 80% equals 100%. So these elements could fit into one line since they have such a width. But as we know, as the block elements, they place themselves below each other. But we can change that, setting them the float property. For our logo, float with the value of left, like this. And let's set it also to our UL, like this. And voila, our elements place themselves next to each other. The float property also recognizes the right value, like this. And now you can see the order changed because the first element goes to the right edge of its parent, and then the next element also goes to the right edge of its parent, but it meets the first element, so it stops right here. But let's keep it as it was. For both elements, we set the float property with the left value. It's the same thing that we may do with our list items, which we can see right here. So let's refer to them like nav.li, and let's use the float property with the value of left. Let's see the effect, and voila, we can see that our list items are placed one after another. Now let's go to our UL tag and let's set the same height of 60 pixels as in our logo, like this. So our whole navigation has the same height, and as you can see, now we can continue to style it. Now I'm going to show you the first problem with the float property. Let's decrease the size of our logo, for example to 150 pixels. And let's set its margin right to 40 pixels, like this. And this is something that you can do to separate your logo from your list items, but I did it to show you the first problem with the float property. As we know, our logo and our list are in the nav tag. So let's refer to our nav tag. And let's set its background color to black, like this. And we can see no difference. But beneath our logo and our UL should be black background, because this is the nav tag, inside of which are those two elements. Let's go to the DevTools. Let's go to our nav tag. Let's select it. And you can see in the corner, it has 958 pixels of its width, but 0 pixels of its height. And this is the problem with the float property. Normally, this navigation should grow and expand with its children inside. Since our logo has 60 pixels of its height and our UL has 60 pixels of its height, our nav should have also 60 pixels of its height, but as we can see, it has 0. This is the problem with the float property, that the parent doesn't see the height of its floating children, so it stays at 0 height. I will show you in this section how to deal with this problem, but for now I just wanted to mention that something like this exists. The first way of dealing with this problem is to set the fixed height to our parent. So let's copy it from here and let's set height of our nav to 60 pixels. And you can see the difference already on your screen, because we can set by ourselves the height of the element, but it won't expand automatically as it does without the float property. But this is usually that we don't want to do with our elements. We would like to our element automatically grow with its children. And I will show you how to do this in the later part of this section. But for now, you can know that we can place the fixed height of our element, and then everything works exactly as it should. And now you can see that our nav has 60 pixels of its height and has its background color, which is black. The second way of dealing with this problem is to delete this height property and use the property overflow hidden, which works like this. Overflow property with the hidden value. As you can see, it works. Also, you can use the auto value. And in this case, to dealing with the floating elements, it will work exactly as the hidden value, like this, because the overflow hidden property works in the way that it hides everything that would go beyond our element. So to do this, the parent has to compute the height of its children to set its own height, and this way our problem with floating elements is solved. But once again, that may cause another problems, because let's say that we want to have additional menu on hovering on this one menu item that will expand in a column, for example on smartphone, and it will go from the top to the bottom of our website, but overflow hidden property won't display it after going beyond our nav tag, because it will hide everything that is beyond its own tag. So setting the fixed height of our element and using the overflow hidden property may solve some problems with the float property, but they are not perfect. I will show you other methods that are better for dealing with this situation, but as I said, it will be in the later part of this section. For now, let's delete these properties. Let's keep an empty row for now for our navigation. As we can see, we have this space right here. We can use margin to separate our logo from our list, or we can change this property, for example, to padding right. Then our logo will have a padding with the same color, so it would be the same effect as in the beginning. But if we don't want to have a background color between our logo and our list, and we don't want to have the same color as our logo, let's say we want to have a yellow rectangle separating our logo from our list. We can do it with the border right property, and we want it to be solid yellow and 40 pixels border. This will be the effect. This is the border only on the one side of our element. So as you can see, you can use the border property for many creative things. But let's go back to our margin right property, and let's try to use the percentages to set it. For example, our UL has width of 80%, So let's say our logo should be 15% with the margin right of 5%, which should give us 100%. As you can see, everything works fine, and you can use percentages to set the margin of our element. But let's try to make it padding right to 5%. And if we select our logo in the DevTools, we can see our padding using the percentages as the unit works as well. This is the padding we get of our logo. But let's try to set border right of 5% solid yellow. And we can see this doesn't work at all. We have 15% of our logo, 80% of our UL, free space of 5%, and our border right property doesn't work at all. If we put, for example, 20 pixels, it will work with no problem. If we use, for example, viewport width unit, it will also work as the same with viewport height, as you can see, but percentages won't work in the border property. This is something that you may remember because it might come in handy. Since we are talking about it, I want to show you something else. Let's close these DevTools for now. Let's make our navigation how it was before, without this border right property, and with the width of our logo set to 20%. And as we can see, we have 100% of our browser window because the 80% has the UL tag and the 20% has this div with the logo. But now I want to show you something. If we place our body with the height of, for example, 150 viewport height, so the body of our website will have 150% of one viewport. Let's save it. We will get the scroll bar. And you can see that 100% of our navigation, which you can see right here, fits exactly and normally with the scroll bar. And now let's try to change those percentages to viewport width units. Like this. Theoretically, it should be the same because viewport width means the width of the browser window, and as we could see, 100% of the navigation was already the 100% of the browser window. But only theoretically. As you can see, now our whole structure of our navigation gets messed up. If we will comment the height of our body and we don't have this scroll bar, everything works perfectly. But you have to know that if the body of our website will grow, this scroll bar will appear, and then our structure will be completely destroyed. And that's the difference between the percentages and the viewport width units. 100% of the width means always 100% of the width with or without the scroll bar, and the viewport width units don't take into account this scroll bar, which may appear and will appear if our website will grow. So it's best to remember that we set the width of our elements with the percentages. As you can see, everything works fine, no matter if we have the scroll bar or we don't, like this. So it's better to use percentages to set the width of our elements and viewport height units to set their height. Now let's get rid of this CSS rule and let's go on with our project. But first I want to show you something else. Let's comment this float property like this, and let's use display inline block to our elements. Let's save it, and we can already see they don't fit because we have those additional spaces. So let's for now just decrease the percentages of our elements. Now we can see that more or less they place themselves next to each other. Let's try to do the same with our li elements. Instead of float left, let's give them display inline block property like this. And now we can see that something is totally wrong. And without getting into the details, that's why I wanted to show you, because you should know that we use inline block property only to some simple structures, for example simple navigation, because as you can see, when we have many elements placed in the nav tag, like our UL and a div for example, you can see that something is really completely wrong. We can check it with our nav tag and the background color. Let's place black color. We can see now the background color of our navigation works, but the whole structure of it is completely messed up. That's why I wanted to show you the float property, which also has its disadvantages, but with this technique you will be able to create more complex structures and layouts on your website without dealing with these problems with inline block property, which you can see on your screen right now. So let's fix this. We don't need this nav for now. Let's go to the float property. And let's style our navigation how it's supposed to be styled. Let's go to our nav tag. Let's set its max width to 800 pixels. So we will get it like this. Let's center it with the margin property. Let's say we want 50 pixels from the top and the bottom, and auto to center it from the left and the right side of our screen. Now I can see that I have two CSS rules for our UL tag. I'm sorry for that. So let's keep it in one rule as it should be. And let's style our menu items inside our list. Let's go to the li tag. Let's set its width to 25% since we have 4 of them. Now we have equally spread it, and the rest we will do in the nav a tag like this. First of all, let's make them block like this so we can style them freely. Let's increase its font size to 20 pixels like this. Let's use the text align property to center the text in our buttons like this. Let's get rid of this underline. Text decoration none, like this. Let's change its color to white like this. let's change its font family to Arial. And let's use the line height property to center our text from the top and the bottom. As we can see, our UL has this height of 60 pixels. So we can use the line height property with the same value, and our text will be perfectly centered inside our button. Now we have our navigation mostly done. All we need to do is to place the hovering effect like this. And what we want to do after hovering on it is to change the background color to, for example, 444. Let's see if it works. It works perfectly fine. What we would like to place in here is the transition property with the value of 0.2 seconds, like this. And as you can see, our navigation looks fine and works perfectly fine. As we can see it, below 800 pixels of its width, it has 100% of the width of the browser window. Above it, it has 800 pixels of its width and stays at the center of our screen. But now let's jump into some theory about the float property.